Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Kris. This is part two. Excuse me. This is the complete story of Abraham, the father of nations. I got a yawn. That was a good yawn. Felt great. This video is sponsored by Saeed, and he wants you to know that he, wanted to sponsor a video. And he wanted it to be entertaining and informative and educational for everyone. I don't know if this is it. So if it's not, let me know. If it is, great. I just thought it would be interesting. So we're going to start part two before we get into it. I already clicked the thumbs up, but you can click that for me, subscribe. You can donate to the channel through the thanks button. And if you do, you also can sponsor a video. You don't have to donate. Donations are appreciated, but not necessary. But if you do, you get your name sponsoring a video. If you don't, it just takes a little bit longer to get to. All right, on to part two.
God will bring forth from Abraham a mighty king, and God will continue to be the God of Abraham. God's promises to Abraham will be maintained, even if Abraham and his family breach this covenant. We can see the light of the snake crusher from the early chapters of this book filling the hearts and minds of the people of God. God changes Sarai's name here also to Sarah, and while both names mean princess, the addition of the H align her powerfully with the God of all creation, and thus, from her, the children that they will bear together, subduing the earth under God's rule. 1 year passes. God appears to Abraham and Sarah again by the oaks of Mamre. Abraham is 99 years old at this point, well past the age to have children. And yet, God assures them that in 1 year, God will bless them with a child. Meanwhile, God goes to the oaks and stares out over the valley. He is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for their idolatrous wickedness, the very city where Lot and his family have pitched their tents. Abraham, now grafted into this monotheistic care of the one true God, is about to be tested. When we left the light of the garden, we were promised that one day would come a man to crush the head of the evil serpent. This man would have to rule over creation with the magnanimity of God himself, all that Adam could not do. That means that he would have to rule in righteousness and with justice. And so, to test the strength of Abraham's character, God shows Abraham what he will do. His plan is to judge the cities of wickedness that have perverted any concept of righteousness and justice. Abraham pleads with God 8 times. He says if he can find a certain number of righteous people in the city, then God would be unjust to destroy the cities. God thinks the same way. Eventually, Abraham and God agree that if just 10 righteous people, if 10 people align with God's concepts of righteousness, then he will not destroy the city for the sake of the 10. And so, 2 angels go and investigate the city.
But God already knows that there's not 10. So would he just be trying to make Adam feel good by, okay, we'll try to find him. That way Adam can feel like he tried his best. Instead of, there aren't 10, we're going to destroy it. Then Adam might harbor some ill will towards him. Like you didn't even give it a chance. He's giving him a chance now. But he's got to know.
And when they step into the town square, Lot, Abraham's nephew, sees them and bows low to the ground, recognizing them to be righteous, royal men. He pleads with them that they not stay long in the square, for the men of the city are evil. Reluctantly, the men go with Lot back to his house when suddenly there comes a bang on the door. A crowd of people have gathered outside of Lot's house, seeing that he has brought two mysterious men into the house. They demand that Lot bring out the men so that they can commit unspeakable sexual acts towards them. And just as the wicked men are about to breach the door, the angels strike them with blindness and have Lot and his family escape early the next morning. And as the family of Lot is running, a mixture of fire and sulfur pour forth from the sky as the chaos of creation is undone on itself once again. When Abraham sees that the city had been destroyed, and not 10 righteous people were found there, he decides to move his family to the Negev. A reset button. With his new name, a new God, and newfound mercies, they travel back to where they started. But in an almost comic series of parallel events, the king of the land, Abimelech, wants to take Sarah as his wife. But God comes to Abimelech in a dream that night and threatens the mighty king for taking another man's wife. When Abimelech pleads his innocence, the identity of Sarah is then revealed to him, and he too becomes terrified of the man that he has taken to be a prophet. In his rushed fear, he gives Abraham an immense amount of possessions and makes it known that they are welcome to dwell in the land peacefully all they would like. It is after this that the Lord visits Sarah, and she conceives and bears a son. They name him Isaac, the seed of the woman. When Isaac is born, the Lord protects Hagar and her son Ishmael when Sarah demands that they be sent into the eastern wilderness. Abraham gives them provisions for the journey, and God meets the servant and her son by a river. God promises that Ishmael will grow old and father many kings, and we learn that from the son of Abraham, Ishmael fathers the 12 princes of Arabia. Meanwhile, Abimelech returns to greet Abraham and Sarah. He's been watching the growth of this immense family and is likely worried that Abraham will overtake the land of the Philistines that he's the king of. And so, the two set up an agreement to stay clear of each other's way and maintain their amicability in future generations. Because of the peace that had now been brought upon the family, Abraham plants a tamarisk tree and he worships God, claiming him to be the one true, everlasting God of creation. It is after all of these things, time and time again, that Abraham and his wife choose for themselves to know the difference between right and wrong, that Abraham is met with his ultimate test in his trust in God. And as we will learn later in this story, God uses this test to give us a beautiful picture of who he is. God calls out to Abraham. "Here I am," he answered. "Take your son," God says, "your only son Isaac, whom you love. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will tell you about." And so, Abraham got up early in the morning. He saddled his donkey and took with him 2 of his young men and his son Isaac. He split wood for a burnt offering and set out to go to the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. And then Abraham said to the young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there to worship, and then we'll come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac. The hill that Abraham sees in the distance for Isaac will bear many names over the centuries. But in Aramaic, the name of that place was Golgotha, the place of the skull. Has Abraham made a terrible mistake here? After all, he spent a great deal of time bargaining for the life of his nephew Lot, which proved his sense of righteousness and justice. He, of all people, knows that God will listen to his plea. He, of all people, knows God's mercy. But when it comes to his son, he stays silent. To be fair, Abraham's life had been given to him by the God that he now worships. Will God's mercy fail? Will God pronounce judgment on Abraham for sacrificing his son, even if that is a failure on Abraham's part? Will God pronounce judgment on Abraham for withholding his son, even if that's a failure on Abraham's part? The question to ask is this: will God's mercy fail for those he calls righteous? As Abraham lays his son, bound on the altar, his hand raises with a sharpened knife. Here I am. And then he said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy. Don't do anything to him. For now I know that you respect me as a God above all other gods." Abraham looked up, and he saw a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And so Abraham went and took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham named that place, "The Lord will provide." Jehovah Jireh. So it is said, "It will be provided on the Lord's mountain." Abraham considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did. Abraham's life had been given to him by the God that he worshiped. His wealth, his son, and perhaps most importantly, a sacrifice. The very sacrifice that proves Abraham's commitment to trust God's authority.
Sorry, there was a discussion I had once before regarding this situation, and like I couldn't. I couldn't, have raised the knife. The thought process of doing that. No, I don't know if I could have done that. I probably, yeah, I would have done all that and then just kind of waited to see what would happen. But I don't know if I could have gotten to the point of raising the knife. But there was a discussion with some people, and they said, imagine if God doesn't call out in that moment and waits for the strike to happen to kill the microphone. And, okay, I was joking. Apologize. For the strike to happen. And then just like as soon as the knife is plunging in, it's just not really, it's like the knife goes in. I just got an email from someone. So just as kind of like the knife is going in and it's starting to, it doesn't actually do anything. It's kind of like it just disappears. Kind of like one of those knives that like when you stab, they go up inside, but just imagine the blade just disappears as it goes in. So you think you've stabbed him and you pull it out and the blade's like gone and there's no blade there. And they said, imagine if that's what it took for him in this situation. And the person who said that, it was just a really cool concept of you have to make the stab just to, to follow through with it. And the person said, I don't know if I could do that. And I said, well, I couldn't get to that point. And somebody else said, if you're hearing a voice that's telling you to do this, telling you to do that, guiding you, and then gives you a child when you're 100 years old, what is there to doubt? And I was like, I'm not doubting that. I'm not wanting to kill my child. And that is where the doubt would be. And the person simply went, okay, let's say you do kill your child. What's to say they don't bring him back? As fast as you kill him, and the blade's gone, there's no wound, and they wanted to make sure you were following through with it. And I said, but that would be the same as kind of lifting the knife. And they were like, yeah, but lifting the knife is one thing. Plunging it in is completely different. I was like, when you think about it like that, if you have a voice that's telling you you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then gives you a child at 100 years old, yeah. Yeah, I think there is some kind of owing to that respect. As difficult as it would be, it's crushing to think about it. And I just don't know if I could pick up that knife. I don't know if I could get to that point. I don't know. What do you think? Could you do it? If you didn't know that as soon as you lift that knife, it's like, okay, don't do it. I believe you. But could you get to that point? Some of you, I'm sure, yes, because you would have that faith. I could have that faith, but in the back of my head, there would be also like, this is my child.
The very sacrifice that reveals a profound display of God's faithfulness. God reassures Abraham of the covenant that they had made. And it is here when Sarah dies at the age of 127. When the time of mourning was complete for Abraham, he buys a large choice tomb to bury his wife, and he pays Ephron, a man that he meets, 400 pieces of silver for it. Although Ephron was willing to give it to him for free, Abram wanted there to be no doubt in their minds that this land was indeed his and his kinsmen. Before Abraham dies, he takes a second wife named Keturah, and together they have many, many children. At the age of 175, Abraham dies, and he's buried by his two sons, Isaac and Ishmael, come together united under their father and their God. And they bury their father in the cave next to Sarah. These stories may...
Does anyone know where that cave is? Just asking.
They seem strange to us now. But they give us indeed a profound picture of sacrifice and atonement throughout the rest of the biblical epic. You see, when Babel had fallen and the people scattered, the gods that they made spoke to them. They commanded them to commit horrific acts, including the act of sacrificing their own child. So let me be clear. The God of this story is still, unlike every other god in thought at the time. We will see his detestation of child sacrifice as we go on. You see, he never intended Abraham to kill his own son that Abraham loved. For God loved him too. And from Isaac will come the very man to crush the head of the snake. And so we must see in Isaac something of the snake crusher. That for the death that was brought on by the serpent to be defeated, the snake crusher must enter through the chaotic waters of the grave and come out on the other side victorious. For now, God says in this story, for now, a ram will do, but for long it cannot. You see, we know that God loved Isaac, because one day God too will send himself as the son whom he loves. And the son will know, and the son will choose. A path of life, or a path from knowing right from wrong. And there will be no ram that day. Only the God who provides the way to eternal life by himself.
Okay. Yeah, I think about Jesus, but it's not about G's. It's not about G's, he's. All right. Well, I hope that the story of Abraham was good enough. If you didn't like it, Saeed, let me know. I can do a different one. But I thought it was interesting. Well, not a whole lot to add. So I'm just going to end this here. But until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.